Hello, welcome to Smash Hits Sports. I'm Cody. We have an incredible guest on today, Alex Dauterive, who is a college football fan through and through, and we are going to recap what I think is one of maybe the greatest stories in the history of sports. Indiana football is your 2025 national champions, an incredible game against Miami, which taps off an unbelievable season, 16-0. They said it could never be done, that the era of undefeated national champions was over. And the last three national titles have run through the Big Ten. So much to talk about. But Alex, what was your takeaway from that game? Because it was incredible.
I was just happy that we actually got a good championship game. I was just sick of these blowout games. And so I'm happy. Look, was it slow at the start? The defense was doing what they needed to do. And then the second half was just offense, like going crazy. Also still defense too, but we actually had a full game of good football. Okay, that's what made me happy. Sure, people are going to complain about officiating here and there, but I loved this game through and through. I was just happy to see a competitive game. And look, it went all the way up to the last drive. Okay, every snap mattered. And I was just happy to see a football game like that instead of just seeing, I don't want to see, Georgia blowing out TCU again, or Indiana go blow out Oregon, in Alabama like they did. We wanted a competitive game. We got a competitive game.
Yeah, it was. And the spread being 7.5 was actually kind of a large spread for a national title. But this was the first one-score game we've had in a national championship since 2018 Georgia-Bama. And for it to be two teams, fresh blood that we have not seen in a long time. I've seen Miami win a national championship in my lifetime, but I wasn't old enough to be watching sports at that point. I was, 2001. I think this is one of the best. It's one of the best games we've had all season. I use Rate Game, which is an incredible app. If you don't use it, download it. But
Yes.
you rate games kind of like Letterboxd or Goodreads, where like you rate a movie or a book after you've read it. That's what Rate Game is. You rate a game after you watch it. The average score for users on that was like a 9.3, 9.2. So it's one of the best games of the entire season to cap off what was an incredible run for Indiana. They steamrolled Oregon. They steamrolled Alabama. But this game, it felt like it was a perfect ending to what was a great college football season, because we've had a lot of great games all year long. But defenses, I think, have been kind of the story of this college football season. Texas and Ohio State started us off with a great defensive battle between the number one and the number two team right early in the season. But Indiana's defense was incredible. Miami's defense is not going to get enough credit because they lost this football game. They were insane last night. They were absolutely incredible. If it wasn't for a block punt, like, they held Indiana to under 20 points. That's unbelievable. Nobody's hardly done that all season. For Miami to do that defensively, I want to talk about Sig, because I think his coaching job is going to go down as one of the greatest coaching performances in the history of sport.
100%.
But last night was on full display. Everything that you want from the Signetti experience, you got last night. It was incredible.
I like the gutsy play calls. Okay, he was like, you know what? I have the talent. I'm gonna trust my gut. Let's call these plays, and they were doing it. They made it happen. Which you could even see, they would pan to him. You could tell these guys are nervous. They're like, shoot, is it gonna work? And it worked. I like what you said. Defensively, you have to look at Miami and give them props, because it wasn't like the offense was putting him in these great situations. It was 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out for a good bit there. So it's like your defense is going to get tired. They can't keep being what they were doing. They were doing a great job holding Indiana. That punt, I mean, right when I saw it, I just had a feeling something like that was going to happen. That happens. Good luck.
Yeah, it's one of those things where Miami played a good football game. Indiana played a perfect football game. Not quite perfect, but close to as perfect as you could get, right? They didn't turn the ball over. The number 99 on Miami, I can't remember his last name. He had an incredible game. That sack that he had on Fernando Mendoza, where like I thought for sure that ball was coming out. I don't know how Mendoza was able to hold on to the ball, but Ruben Bain, Mesidor, both of those guys had great games up front. And it was the small things. The 4th and 5 play to go for it down, like in your own end, that could have been catastrophic if they didn't get it. They run a quarterback draw, and it was beautifully blocked. They installed that play specifically for this game because of how Miami lines up defensively. They were expecting a Tampa 2 on the back end. They got like a half zone, half man look. And Fernando just made a play. And I think it's the combination of Cignetti being as ballsy as he is and as defiant as he is, and Mendoza just refusing to give up for his team. And he didn't look his best tonight. But in the 5 or 6 plays where you had to make the play, Mendoza made it every single time. The 4th and 5 touchdown. On that drive earlier, the back shoulder throw to Becker where, look, shout out to the refs. They were letting him play. They were letting him play. Some of those back shoulder throws, the guys all over him a little bit. Incredible. Like Becker's not going to get, enough credit because Mendoza, the Heisman. He
Becker's
played
catches were
maybe
nuts
the game
in
of
this
his
game.
life.
I don't think anyone was thinking, like, who's Becker? Those catches, every time a ball went his way, he got them. And they weren't like, they were massive catches. They were game-defining catches. And you got him the ball, he was getting it.
Yeah, and like Omar Cooper Jr., Elijah Surratt, even they didn't play their best game tonight. I think Indiana, I'm going to pull up the box score real quick. They only had 186 passing yards. Like, it wasn't some prolific, offensive masterpiece. But there were a couple situations where 3rd and 5, Omar Cooper Jr. runs out to the flat out of that split, or like the stacked wide receivers on the left side, runs out to a little flat. They get the 5-6 yards that they need. Like, it was just getting exactly what they needed. Indiana did make 2 mistakes that I thought were absolutely going to cost them. The false start when it was 2nd and 1. I thought if they got the first down there, that the game was over. Like, they were going to be able to run out the clock. That false start, settling for a field goal, that gave Miami life. And then as soon as Miami gets the ball back, they commit a personal foul call, late hit on Beck. Like, I get that you want to get in the guy's face, get pressure, and they were letting them play for the most part. It was a personal foul. Like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, yeah, it wasn't a late hit. They got screwed. No, it was the right call. But Indiana made a couple mistakes. Miami just made like 1 or 2 more. And it's those things that it defines Indiana's entire season. It came down to the small things, and they did the small things right almost the entire game.
I will say, I forget which play was. It was when Indiana was trying to get the defense, Miami's defense, in a loop and confused, and they had one of the receivers going back and forth there, and the defense had no clue what was happening. Sure enough, and I was watching, I was like, oh my goodness, they're going to get this right past Miami. Guy goes, catches it, easy. The defense of Miami had no clue. There's a few plays like that, and I was just like, Miami's defense, they just weren't ready for it.
Yeah, and Miami's defense, while they made a ton of plays, they couldn't make the big one. And that was the biggest difference in this game is the sacks. Like, there was a couple good sacks by that defense, but they couldn't get the ball out, right? They had a couple good run stops, but it wasn't like any big tackles for loss. And it's as much credit to Indiana for preventing those things from happening as it is for Miami not getting them. But that defense, like, there's multiple first-round NFL guys on that defense, and Indiana did exactly what they needed to do. I have to talk about Carson Beck a little bit because his story is so weird. It's one of the weirdest stories I've seen in a long time in college football because he has 6 losses in his career. He's played a lot of football. To lose only 6 games is absolutely insane. I don't think he's not going to get the credit he deserves because he didn't, take that next step right. But also, of those 6 games, 4 of those games, the last offensive play by his team was an interception. It's crazy. It's I don't know if it's the anti-clutch gene because he's won so many games. So, like, you can't sit here and be like, oh, anti-clutch. But they won. Yeah, they beat Ohio State, right? They beat Ole Miss. He had that 4th quarter touchdown at the end of the Ole Miss game to win it. So he has some clutch gene. It's not like it's not there at all. His story is such a weird one to be told. And I'm not sure how college football is going to remember Carson Beck. Alex, how are you going to remember the Carson Beck experience?
I don't think the hate is warranted, okay? I understand the interception, but the amount of hate that he gets is crazy because he also puts the team where without him, they wouldn't be where they are. So people need to, like, sit back and remember this. You can't put all the blame on him, okay? It's like also if you about Josh Allen. It's like, guys, the reason they are where they are, the man's leading the team. He's doing what they need to do. You can't just put it all on him. Now, that throw, it stinks. It was underthrown. not great, intercepted. It sucks, okay? But also that same drive, he's why they were there in the first place. There's also missed catches and stuff. You're not seeing us over here talking about the wide receivers. We're talking about Carson Beck and that one interception. There's so many other plays that were missed that were not his fault. So I don't know. I think Carson Beck's a great quarterback. Okay, we saw what he could do at Georgia. We saw what he did over here at Miami. Yes, interception, the clutch gene, I get that, but I'm not going to let that be what is his, the history of Carson Beck. And I'm a Florida fan, and I can say that. Like, I think he's a great quarterback. Now, the pressure, all that. I mean, I watched that throw, and I think everyone kind of knew, like, oh man, this might not end well, and then boom, intercepted. But hey, the team has faith in him. They're like, okay, we trust him to go and make these throws. And guess what? It just doesn't happen some of these times.
Yeah, and that's part of it is if you're not put in high pressure situations, you're never going to see this, right? And he put himself in those positions to make those plays. He made a lot of them. There were a few that he didn't make, and ultimately it cost his team games. I want to talk about the big picture of Indiana football, because I think I hate when people use the phrase college football is better when X team is good, because I just don't agree with that. I think college football good at any given time, right? Like if one team pops up here and there, it's incredible to watch. And we've seen now Indiana, who was one of the losingest programs in the history of the sport. They were the first team in college football history for 700 losses. They, unbelievable, win the national title after being in college football for 136 years. I think more than anything, this gives college football fans hope. And I think it's one of the coolest things we've seen happen in college football in a long time.
I think this, I like that I want.
Mike's muted. A little behind the scenes. My wife had to leave for volleyball practice, and I am on baby duty. So my daughter, right down there, off camera, because some of you people in the chat are weird, and I don't like it. However, I'm just making sure that she's okay. However, I can still hear you, so you go, so that way the people, have something to listen to. But yeah, look. We sometimes got to do what you got to do, right?
Dude, dad stuff. I love it. Indiana, it's good for the sport when we see other teams winning. I don't want to see, only Bama, only Ohio State. I don't want to see the same teams going and being the only ones. I think this shows that we're in the time right now with this sport where any team, really, you get the right coach that is confident, that knows what he's doing, that believes in that program. He came from JM, like this, just Kurt Cignetti's path to get to Indiana, and then he gets there and he's like, yeah, we're gonna win. Guess what? 2 seasons, second season at Indiana, they win a national championship for the first time at a place that is not a football school, guys. So I think that just shows you now, do they have a lot of money? Yes. Okay, this isn't like a poor school. They are, Indiana, they have tons of money, but it shows people that you can do this.
It cuts out a lot of the excuses, right? There's no, Lane Kiffin, which I don't know if it's an all-time blowback for him, but like, it's one of those where he's like, I don't think I could get it done at Ole Miss, so I'm going to go to LSU. Kurt Cignetti just won a national title in Indiana, and you couldn't get it done at Ole Miss? Maybe that's a you problem. Maybe that's not an Ole Miss problem. Maybe that's a you thing. And it's one of those things where every team, if you root for a college football program, I do not care if you won 2 games last year. If you participate in FBS college football, especially if you're a Power 4 team or a group of 5 team that shows that they can, be competent, like a Boise State, a Tulane, a UConn, like any of those group of 5 teams that show that they can, build a program, you should be ecstatic because there's no reason that could not be you. Brandon Walker says that the most abundant or the most valuable currency in college football is hope. And that like giving a team hope or a program hope is what can take you to that next step. And I fully believe that there should be 100 fan bases who should have just been absolutely injected with hope on Monday night. So it's absolutely incredible. The last thing that I want to recap on 2025 as a whole, right? This is the end of the entire season. It's insane where we started, considering that Penn State was a top 5 team. Clemson had national title hopes. LSU, we saw like half the SEC fire their head coaches. It's a beautiful, crazy, wild college football season. But Alex, if you had to write like a one-line, one-sentence ordeal to describe the 2025 college football season, right? I think it's not quite 2007 chaos. It's not quite 2007 chaos, because you don't even need anything else but one word to describe that year. But I think 2025 is, like, I would describe it as like no doubt. You cannot doubt for a minute. Because I think the moment that you stop believing in your program, they stop believing in themselves. But the moment that you do believe in your program, the moment that you believe in those guys, you believe in your head coach, and you put the effort and what's required to win football games behind that belief, and you can win. Like Miami showed it. Miami almost won a national title before they had ever won an ACC championship. Do you know how insane that is? Indiana just won a national title after playing football for 136 years. The first new national champion we've had since the 1996 Florida Gators. So it's one of those things where there's no new blood and old blood and blue blood in college football anymore. There's just teams that are trying to win football games. And I think that's that's my biggest takeaway from the 2025 season. But Alex, what's your biggest takeaway from 2025?
I think if I summed it up from like what we thought the season was going to go to right now, I would say nothing will go as you expected it to. Because, I mean, if you look at how everyone expected the season to go from week 1 preseason, this is not anything close to what that was. I mean, a bunch of these teams fired their head coaches, and the expectations were national championship year. Look at LSU. It's like nothing went as how we expected, which I think that's also a good thing. I think it's nice to be able to be like, look, all these people were wrong. We don't know what we're talking about half the time because anything could happen. We just saw it with Indiana. Look at Miami, even Ole Miss. Like, did I expect Ole Miss to make it this far, especially with like the changes they had?
Yeah.
No. But these teams, they showed up. And I think that's the hope. Like you said, Lane Kiffin left, and they still had hope. They almost beat Miami, and they could have been the team playing Indiana, which is crazy to think.
Yeah.
So I think people need to, put some respect on all these other programs because they almost did it. They were almost right there, too. Miami, they're a player or two away from potentially being the Natty champions, which I don't think any of us saw that at the start of this year. People did not have faith 100% in Carson Beck and this team.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I love it's the beauty of college sports. College basketball is just as chaotic, and college baseball is the same way. Like, teams just go on runs and you get hot. And we haven't really seen that in college football, where like a team just gets hot at the right time and they go on to make a little bit of a run, because in the old format with the 14 playoff, you didn't have that runway, right? You had to stay hot the entire time. There was no margin for error. And in a 12-team playoff, now there is a little bit of margin for error because Miami lost to SMU and Louisville, and yet they found their identity, right? They revamped what they were as a team. They're like, hey, we're going to run the football. Enough of this Mickey Mouse bullshit. We're going to run the football. We're going to run between the tackles. We're going to lean on you, and we're going to let our defense make plays, and we're going to put pressure on opposing quarterbacks. And that was a recipe for success. It took a little bit of time to find that, but they found it. And I think that's what's so cool about the new format is teams just aren't who they are in week one. Like, week one matters, right? Notre Dame's full, the experience of that, where week one and week two, this still matters who you were then. But it matters who you end up, and I love that change. The other thing is, you said it, this season was impossible to predict. I saw a graphic of like a bunch of college football, a bunch of college media personalities, and who their picks were for the national championship preseason. And I think Taylor Lewan was the only one who picked a team that even made the Final Four. That even made, and he picked Oregon, who didn't make the national title game. He was the only person who picked a team that even made it that far. It's incredible. And I love the unpredictability of college sports. You can't write this. There is no script. There's no, the NFL rigged. No, it's not. Man, college football is so much fun. So to wrap this up, because I don't want this to be a long episode, you guys, I'm sure everybody listening to this is watching all of the college sports stuff, and I love college football, but it's college basketball time. Florida getting hot. But we have to do, I got one more question before we get into wrapping this up. However, before we do that, Home Field, an incredible sponsor. Quite frankly, I just did all of my business stuff for Smash Hit Sports, and it's incredible how supportive the fans are of Home Field's stuff. They are absolutely the best. So they just launched all of their Indiana national championship merch. I mean, this line of merch is absolutely incredible. The perfect shirt, the national champions Hoosiers, undaunted, undefeated, 16 Indiana. This jacket,
Oh, that's so nice.
this jacket might be the greatest thing I've ever seen. Like if you were, and I say this, if Notre Dame had won the national title last year, I would have spent, I don't know, $400 or $500 on merch, probably. If you were an Indiana fan and you don't buy this jacket, I think that's a financially irresponsible decision not to buy it. It's unbelievable. Home Field's merch, it's absolutely incredible. Use code SMASH at checkout. Get 15% off your first purchase at Home Field. 15% off your first purchase at Home Field. Promo code SMASH. You can also use the link in all my social medias or the link in this video if you're watching on YouTube, all that stuff. Now, Alex, to wrap this up, what are you looking forward to in 2026 for college football? Let's put college basketball aside for a little bit because I know you're excited, but 2026 college football, we've had no time to think about it. This is purely just instinctual gut reaction, right? The season ended yesterday. What are you excited for 2026?
I'm excited to see the change, right? All these teams had to go, and just a coaching carousel this season was just chaotic. I want to see the change in all these teams and all these programs and see what they do. I also want to see like Indiana. They had some close games this season, so how are they going to build their roster? Because they're going to be losing a lot of players. What are they going to do to be ready for this next season? Because I think they're a team with how Cincinnati does it. They're going to look very different year to year. I mean, I think Mendoza's brother just transferred out, so there's always going to be so much change happening. So I think for me, I'm excited to see the change. I'm a Florida fan. You got John Summerall over there. I'm excited to see what LSU does over there. Matt Campbell at Penn State. Like, what is going to happen with these programs? Is Penn State going to be like another Iowa State? Because they basically took everyone from there. Look at Oklahoma State. They just took the team from UNT. Same thing with Auburn, taking everyone from USF. So curious to see how all these teams pan out. Because what we just saw with Indiana, he took everybody from JMU, collided them with the Indiana guys, and it meshed really well. Can these other programs do the same thing? I'm curious to see that, and just honestly, I hope college football just stays like this, where we can't predict everything. Is it fun to try to predict everything? Yes, but I like the unknown. That's what I want to see.
As much as there is changes needed to be made to college football, the transfer portal window has to change, the calendar has to change, how we do, some of the selection process. Maybe it needs to be more transparent. I don't know the answer to those questions. Conference realignment, all that stuff. There does need to be change. However, there's a lot of great in college football. There's a lot of incredible things in college football. And I think last night we witnessed a fork in the road. We witnessed college football. It is not the same thing that it's been for a long time, right? The 12-team playoff changes things. The transfer portal changes things. NIL changes things. But at the end of the day, you don't have to have a certain logo on your helmet to have expectations anymore. That's out the window. Oh, you're not going to pick one of the Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, USC, Texas teams to win a national title. Are you crazy? No, you're not crazy anymore, because those are absolutely possible. I'm excited for 2026 because we have no idea who's next. It could be anybody. It could be one of those teams. Georgia could be so pissed off that they were out of it that they could come back fully loaded. Or it could be a team like Florida coming in, new head coach Summerall comes in, brings in a bunch of the guys from Tulane who set a culture. Is Florida now next up? There's so many question marks. The book is so unclear about what's going to happen in 2026. And I can't wait to talk about it. We have a whole summer of just making up bullshit that all of these internet personalities do. But it's one of those things where there's so much to talk about because so much is changing, so much is happening. God damn, I love college football. It's absolutely incredible. Alex, thanks again for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. Make sure if
Thanks
you
for
are
having
listening
me.
to the podcast, you made it to this point, go follow all of Alex's stuff, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. You are on TikTok Live, I think more than anybody I know. It's absolutely incredible. So go check him out. All of his video stuff will be in the description. If you don't subscribe to the podcast, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're closing in on 700 subscribers, hoping to hit that before the final 4. Alex, thanks again. We appreciate you, and we'll see you in the next one.